The mission of the Alliance is to support and defend community choice energy programs in California to advance local clean energy for environmental, economic, and social justice benefits of our community. I'm Jose Torre Bueno. I'm a member of the steering committee. I represent the Center for Community Energy in San Diego. Thank you all for joining us this month. This month, our topic is going to be the new proposal before the CPUC for monthly fees, minimum monthly fees on everyone's electric bill that are proposed to be based on income. And our speaker will be Dave Rosenfeld from the Solar Rights Alliance, who's done major work in fighting the NEM 3 and had some influence, I think, on getting rid of the worst parts of it, and did some very creative politicking to work on the CPUC. After Dave speaks, we'll have time for Q&A and discussion. We should address the question of what can the Alliance do, prioritize. So we'll discuss that in the last 30 minutes. So I don't think we have anybody giving opening remarks, so I will ask everybody else to be muted, which they are, and I'll ask Dave to let us know what we can do about this and what's happening. So Dave, it's yours.
Okay, thank you, Jose. And thanks for having me on. This is great. And it's great to see some people I haven't seen in a while. What I am going to do, so I run the Solar Rights Alliance. It's a nonprofit association of California solar users. And then, as Jose mentioned, I also coordinate the Save California Solar Coalition, which is kind of like a loose, kind of ad hoc. And we, came together. It ended up being about 600 nonprofits and cities and schools that came together to, basically defend net metering, oppose solar tax, and just generally work to keep rooftop solar growing. And as Jose mentioned, we killed off some of the worst of the proposal. We lost on some of the others, and it's now an ongoing fight. What we're going to talk about here, though, is the fixed charge proposal. I'm just going to call it the utility tax because I'm a propagandist, in addition to just all the other things, and that's really what it is. So we might as well just call it that. Let me just quickly describe what's on the table, just a little bit of the context, and then what I want to do is I want to share some data that we've just basically gotten that'll just help to illustrate what the true impacts of what's on the table is. So while we were off fighting the CPUC last year, the legislature passed AB 205, which was, had a bunch of things related to the grid. And inside AB 205 was a little notice provision that requires the CPUC to adopt an income graduated fixed charge with at least 3 tiers based on income. And there was no public debate. Nobody is claiming credit. Nobody's claiming responsibility for authoring this little provision. But nonetheless, it passed. We were aware that it passed when it did pass and just had too many things to do in just kind of fighting what was in front of us. So we knew that this day would come. But, I think we can speculate that this was, certainly a leadership job, and probably, no doubt the utilities were behind it. And then, our friend Severin Bornstein at UC Berkeley, gave it the academic cover to make it seem like it's a legitimate idea. I'm editorializing a bit. Some people here might think it's a good idea, but you know where I'm going to be coming from on this. So then fast forward to where we are around now, where the CPUC is open to proceeding. And when these proceedings open, the first thing is that parties to the proceeding put proposals on the table. So there's been a bunch of proposals for exactly what these income graduated fixed charges should be. And so that's kind of one piece of content. And then the CPUC won't make a final decision until June of next year. So we've got a long time before this whole thing wraps up. And so the next, 10 months or so are going to be interesting. So that's the backdrop. And then I guess just the other 2 things is that if you ask the proponents, to the extent that there's anyone that kind of even like remotely claims some affinity to the idea, they will tell you 2 things. There's 2 rationales to do some kind of like income graduated fixed charge. The first is that this will more fairly assign the fixed costs of the grid to those who are most able to pay. It'll essentially make the cost of the grid shared more fairly, and will have the net result of lowering utility bills for lower income people. So that's one rationale for doing this. And then the other rationale is electrification, that right now, California's electricity prices are too high to really incentivize people to switch from gas to electric. And so by increasing the fixed charge and then lowering the volumetric rate, which is what this whole thing is about, then you can get the volumetric rate to a level that people would be willing to, go get that heat pump instead of the gas furnace and what have you. So those are the rationales. Okay. So that's that, and that's how the utilities are selling it. And then a couple of the folks that are part of the utilities kind of crew, which would include the Public Advocate's Office, NRDC, Turn, in this case, the Sierra Club as well, who are all proposing pretty steep fixed charges. And when I say proposed, there's a wide range of proposals. It's not quite apples to apples, but more or less what's being put on the table are, something on the order of like $60 a month on the low end, or sorry, $60 a year for somebody that's on the CARE program, for example, all the way to something that might be more like, $1,000 a year, $1,500 a year for kind of wealthier people. So that's kind of the range. And the mid range, for people in the median is kind of like between $400 and $600, $400 to $1,000 a year, is what the fixed charge would look like. And you would pay this even if you bought zero energy from the utility. All right, so there's a range of proposals and these are some of the parties, and that's kind of what they look like. Without getting into too much detail. Okay, so what I want to present to you here is less of a campaign plan and more just some of the data from the analysis. So CALSA, which is a different organization than the one I run, but I work closely with it. So CALSA is the California Solar and Storage Association, and they commissioned an analysis to try to answer two questions. One is, do these fixed charge proposals actually incentivize electrification? And then number two is, what is the actual bill impact on all kinds of customers? This is important because when you look at the utility et al.'s proposal, they tend to just focus your eye on the impact on kind of the median. And the problem with just focusing on the median is, as anyone who kind of knows even a little bit about median, is that median is just a median, but if you actually unpack what median is, it's bumpy on either side. And so if you really want to understand how this thing would impact people, you need to look at the full picture. And so CALSA commissioned a study. I've gotten permission from CALSA. It just really is done. So I've gotten permission from CALSA to share it with you all. I can't send the deck out afterwards because they haven't done like kind of the internal review all the way through. But that will happen very, very soon. And then we're going to have something that we can actually send out that you all can kind of like independently verify, which I think is important, that people have data in their hands that they can independently verify. But what I'm going to present to you is, and I was involved in kind of helping them design the study and kind of the various iterations as we're moving through the data. So it's not a total just like blind handoff. I feel like I have some ownership over the data that I'm going to show you as well. So let me share my screen now, and I'm just going to walk through this, then offer a couple of like just remarks, and then we'll just move right into questions. Sound good? Okie dokie. So let me just share my screen and just blow this up a little bit. All right, can I just get a thumbs up that you can see Flagstaff research? Very good. Okay, those are the folks that did the study. And I'm just going to run through everything, and then we can take questions when I'm done. So I'm going to breeze through some of these, the technical slides, because we can always come back to that. But the bottom line is that what this guy did was used kind of the basic commonly used software to model out the impact of three of the proposals that were put in. So we looked at the impact of the Public Advocate Office proposal, the NRDC/Turn proposal, and the utilities proposal. So those are the three. And what we did was said, okay, what is the impact of these proposals in each of the utility territories among the most common rate plans for three types of households? One was the median household, which is about like 2,500 square foot home that uses about 6,400 kilowatt hours of energy. Another was a smaller home that's about like 1,250 square feet that uses like 3,500 kilowatt hours a year. And this would be like a little bit larger than your average rental, for example. A rental or an apartment would be smaller, but somewhere in that range. We're looking for like apartment dwellers or smaller single family homes and that kind of thing. And then on the other end is a larger home that's like 100 square feet and change, that's using more like between 10 and 13,000 kilowatt hours a year of energy. So we looked at that, and then we looked at three income categories. One is people that are just on the CARE program and sort of assumed around like $45,000 a year annual income. That's around the cutoff for like a family of three for CARE, and which is kind of like the average size family. Then we looked at the median being like about 80, I think it's like $88,000 a year. And by the way, when I say median income, it's not just literally only households that make 88,000. That captures households that are just above the CARE threshold, all the way to $150,000 a year. So it captures the working poor that don't qualify for government assistance, all the way to what you would call like a middle class household. So that was the second income category we looked at. And then the third is what I talk about as the two-teacher household, which makes a little bit more than $150,000 a year. The reason why I call it the two-teacher household is because I think anyone that is a two-teacher household or a two-transit worker household that's living in the Bay Area or in the coastal cities knows that they feel pretty middle class, or struggling to make ends meet, might not be able to or own a home, or struggling with housing and childcare costs. But we find that the bean counting elites who work off spreadsheets would call these folks just wealthy. And so I'm just kind of level setting by going, we wanted to model what is a middle class two-teacher household, what's the impact there. So that's why I'm calling it that. Okay, so those are sort of the dimensions we looked at. And then the consultant used kind of software to basically just kind of model out kind of typical energy use patterns for people who live in these kinds of environments at these different income levels, different climate zones and that kind of thing. So that's kind of like my high level summary of the design of the whole thing. And I'm just going to breeze through, like they looked at, basically for the low use, normal use, and high use, what is the home size, the kind of insulation, what are sorts of the appliances you're using. Most of these people are on gas, so what's the nature of all of that? Looked at kind of heat maps and climate zones for kind of the three different IOUs and kind of picked a typical profile. And then took a look at, each of the rate proposals, for example, the public advocate. I mean, it's just it has two components to it. One is what's the fixed charge for each of the different income levels. It's a little hard to see. And then what's the volumetric rate? What's the volumetric rate going to be in conjunction? And, of course, the raw data is pretty complex because you're looking across not only income bands, but then also when you get down to the volumetric rates, they obviously vary depending on the time of year that we're talking about. We looked at different rate schedules. So we looked at three different rate schedules. We looked at what the CARE discount is for each of the IOUs, and then same thing on the gas side. When we were modeling out a home that electrifies from gas, we were using some assumptions about like what a low efficiency gas scenario is, what a high efficiency gas scenario is, and then finally, what would be the standard equipment you would use if you're moving to electric, kind of thing. All right, so on the first question, I'm not gonna, again, we will share this soon. I just, CALSA just needs to do their internal review. So you're gonna take all this with a grain of salt. You will wanna independently verify that any of this makes sense. But I'm just gonna run through this just to kind of give you the high levels. So on the question of, does this, do these proposals incentivize you to electrify or not? The answer is no. And so let me show you how we get to that no. The most important thing to look at here, these two boxes are basically what happens today for your average non-CARE customer that's using low efficiency gas, your average non-CARE customer that's on high efficiency gas, your average CARE customer that's on low efficiency gas, and your average CARE customer on high efficiency gas. All right, so that's kind of like what they're paying today under the three IOUs. This line right here is essentially what the volumetric rate has to be in order for electrification to be the same or better than gas. And the bottom line is, even with the fixed charge proposals lowering the volumetric rate, they don't lower the volumetric rate anywhere close to enough to make it make sense to switch from gas to electric. And so you can see in some situations here, for example, if you were on low efficiency gas and you, for one reason or another, decided you wanted to stay on low efficiency gas once your furnace aged out or what have you, then in some of the scenarios, like over here with current NRDC or the IOUs, you'd be better off switching to electric. But that's not how it works in the real world. Consumers have choices. Whether you're already on high efficiency gas or you're on low efficiency gas and your furnace or your gas stove or your water heater ages out, what it's basically saying here is that you would be just better off as a consumer, just either sticking with or switching to high efficiency gas. And what these numbers mean is this is how much money, more or less money you will pay a year by sticking with this modality. So if you're on high efficiency gas, sorry, my mouse keeps going out. You basically would be paying $300 less a year by sticking with high efficiency gas in PG&E territory under the Public Advocate Office's proposal than if you switch to electric, if you follow me. Another way of putting it is if you live in PG&E, you would be paying $300 more a year to go electric under the Public Advocate's fixed charge proposal than if you just stuck with gas. So the bottom line is that assuming that consumers have choices and they will be rational about it, you will generally save between $60 to $400 a year, whether it's care or non-care, sticking with high efficiency gas than you would to go electric. And this doesn't even talk about the actual cost, the upfront cost, the premium you pay for the heat pump, and that's all that kind of stuff. It's just to say on day one, this does not incentivize people to electrify. So that's kind of finding number one, and I hope that's clear, and we'll come back and do questions. But so then you've got to beg the question, well, if this doesn't help anyone electrify, then is there any other good thing about it? And so let's get to that. So the first thing let me do is care, because obviously this is a group that cares about equity. Care among, is the poorest people in the state. And so what would be the bill impact on people on the care program? So the bottom line is that for the most part, people on the care program would benefit from the fixed charge proposal. So I just want to be really clear about that. They don't benefit a lot. And by the way, this is, we were just trying to kind of be very consistent in the modeling. I don't think you can find very many, if any, care customers who are in the high energy use home, right? We just modeled it because we wanted to be consistent, but most care customers are in this category, right? And then a few might be over here. They're living in smaller homes, apartments, that kind of thing. And so if you kind of assume this is where most care customers are, you can see here that most care customers are going to see small reductions in their bill. This breaks down to basically $5 or $10 a month, which if you're on care, $5 to $10 a month is not anything to spit at, but it's not like it's an earth-shattering situation. It's not like it's a game changer. So the NRDC proposal in PG&E territory gets you to like a $15 a month bill savings for care customers, and that's about it. So again, this is the thing that's most real in this chart is the 1,250 square foot home. And you can see that's generally the savings that you're going to get from care. Okay, so now let's move to non-care. We had this for all three IOUs. So let's just look at PG&E in depth, and then we'll just breeze through Edison and San Diego Gas and Electric because the findings are basically the same. So you can see that high energy users do very well here. They see pretty significant bill reductions from all of this. And then you can also see that kind of median energy users, it's kind of a mixed bag. It's more or less a wash, but like, a little bit better under the Public Advocate proposal, and then worse under the NRDC turn proposal. But, whatever, that's kind of the median. But then look over here. So low energy users, again, mostly renters, mostly apartment dwellers, their bills go up under, and quite a lot. Like, look at this. Under the IOU proposal, if you're in PG&E territory, you're going to see bills go up. Sorry, I'm missing one element here. So let me just back up for a second. This chart actually has two income brackets here. So this is the median income right here. And then this is the two teacher household thing. So this median is basically anyone above the care threshold all the way to $150,000 a year. And then this is the two teacher scenario over here. All right, same basic thing. If you're in the wealthier, bigger homes, bigger energy user, bills are going to go down under both income brackets. If you're in the median, and then median home size, your bills are going to go down here. If you're a little bit, in the two teacher household, it's actually not as good. But then across the board, if you are a smaller energy user, AKA renter, et cetera, then whether it is your median or two teacher household, your bills are going up. Or in some cases, maybe it's a wash, like in the case of over here. And then if you're in PG&E, you're seeing your bills go up, by we'll get to a bubble chart on what this actually means, but it's going up. Okay, and then this is basically the numbers are the same, but the numbers are different, but the finding is the same for Edison. So I'll just pause, again, bigger energy users will see bill reductions. It's actually not very good at all for people even along the median. And then it's really not very good for lower energy users, both in the median income and in the two-teacher household, a little bit more middle class. And then San Diego Gas and Electric, again, big energy users do well. Median energy users in both the median income and two-teacher do not do very well. They see bills go up. And then obviously, as soon as you get to smaller energy users, renters, et cetera, then obviously it's like no contest. Okay, so that's kind of broadly. And then I think the easiest way to kind of sum this up, and then we'll take questions, is I thought this was a useful chart the consultant put together, which is basically to just go, there's median energy usage, and then really how does it fall down? And so he went and grabbed Energy Commission data on like just energy use by housing unit and did this little chart for us. And so basically this axis is annual energy consumption. This is high energy consumption. This is low energy consumption. And then this is the percentage of all households in IOU territory. All right. And so this category right here, what is labeled as number 3, is what you would call like the low usage category. And this is like medium, multifamily homes generally is like this category. And this is about 1 in 5 IOU households right here are, what you would call like low use multifamily homes, that kind of thing. Number 5 is kind of like efficient single family homes. So, maybe they're either smaller or they're just efficient. They're just not using as much energy as bigger or less efficient homes. And this is also, this is 1 in 3 households in the state. And then what's labeled number 4 is really big energy users, the biggest in the state, and that's 1 in 5 IOU households. And again, it's not a perfect proxy, but the bigger energy users are usually wealthier and live in bigger homes. Okay, so this is how, like, when you unpack the median, what it looks like. And so thus, if you really want to kind of take a big look at what the bill impacts are, you would go here to the last slide. And these are bubble charts that take a look at. This first row is median household income across the Public Advocate Office, NRDC turn, and IOU proposal. This is the two-teacher household across the same set of proposals. And then the blue line is the break-even point. And if anyone that's above the blue line is going to see their bill go up, anyone that is below the blue line will see their bill go down. And it's the same thing. This is energy use. So this is big energy use. This is small energy use. So you can see, for example, with the Public Advocate proposal, the lower energy users on the whole, you can see how they are going to see their bills go up. The bigger energy users on the whole are going to see their bills go down. But then here's the biggest bubble over here. So essentially, these people are subsidizing these people. And it's the same thing over here with the NRDC turn proposal. These people are subsidizing these people. These people are subsidizing these people. And then obviously it's even worse for the two-teacher household. And once you get over to the IOU territory, pretty much everybody gets screwed. So the Public Advocate proposal is surely more moderate than the IOU proposal, by a long shot. But look at this. This is millions of people, the people above this line, and generally the working poor, middle class, people who are having trouble making ends meet. So the bottom line, as I'm just going to stop my screen share, is no, it doesn't incentivize electrification at all. You'd still be better off sticking with natural gas under any of these proposals, even the more so-called moderate one. And millions of working class people, working poor, all the way to like working middle class people who are, hanging on, but not hanging on by a lot, they're going to see their bills go up. And the people that are going to benefit the most are going to be, the wealthiest, biggest energy users, which, by the way, they'll get those benefits whether or not they go electric or not. And then for care, they do benefit. And then I think it's up to, you decide for yourself whether this juice is worth the squeeze, whether giving them a $5 to $10 to $15 a month discount is worth basically all of these other impacts, or perhaps there's an easier way to just assist people on the care program. I think people on this call can think of a number of policy levers that would be a lot simpler that wouldn't cause as much dislocation. So that's what I got. And obviously there's so much more to say. Like I can hear already Al Weinrub in my ear that I'm not talking about how this reinforces the utility business model. You know, I'm not talking about solar and conservation and all that kind of stuff. What I wanted to do was just answer, I think, the two most important questions that I think just level set: who's the winner, who's the loser, what does this mean for electrification? So then we're kind of free to then kind of apply your frames to, you know, what this is really about, which of course there's lots to say. So now I'm done.
Okay, that was terrific and very data loaded and very good data. I'm going to open it up for questions, but I'm going to take my moderator's privilege to ask the first question. It seems to me that the most obvious group that are low users that might have moderate income are people who have solar power. And despite your organization, you haven't said anything about solar users. It seems to me the group that's going to be most unjustly hit by this is people who have low to zero usage because they have solar. Could you quickly say something about that?
Yeah, and almost I'm almost kind of going in the opposite direction just to make a point. This will double the bills for people that have solar for the most part. There's no doubt about that. And it will essentially make it for anyone who's considering going solar, it'll ruin the value proposition. You know, there's no doubt about that. And then anyone, and what it also does is essentially any activity that you would take to lower your energy usage, it would have no impact. So the one thing that consumers have, the tools that they have to control their energy bill, is conservation, efficiency, and solar. By essentially having a fixed charge, you render those activities economically meaningless. And so it'll essentially strip the consumer of any kind of control that they personally can exert over their energy bill through their own behavior, and put the utility completely at the steering wheel and in charge. And I think that's really the upshot, is like, yes, it's going to ruin the value proposition for, let's put it this way, we will have plenty of things to say to our members about how they ought to speak up and defend their interests. But I think there's a broader interest here, which is just, this strips any consumer, whether or not it's solar, conservation, efficiency, it takes control away, because you don't then get to control it anymore. What was 30 years of California policy, which was basically like, if you reduce your energy usage, you will be rewarded with a lower energy bill. That basically flips it on its head and says, actually, it's now California policy that you have to use as much energy as possible, whether you can afford it or not.
I like that. I like that phrasing.
Especially thanks, Dave, for coming and laying out this study. And what it shows is that, and well, it's sort of interesting. I mean, I would just agree with Claire. I mean, this is a red alert because this is all framed, and I wouldn't ignore this at all. This is all framed as a way of transferring wealth from wealthy people to low-income people. I mean, that's the whole push behind it. That's the way it's being talked about. We don't even know who's advocating for this, so it's really clear that it's the IOUs. I mean, you don't have to even ask that question. But it's another one of these false frameworks that looks like it's equitable, but it has nothing to do with equity. In fact, it's a reverse equity altogether. And the fact that NRDC and the Public Advocate's Office and Sierra Club and whatnot are all lined up behind this is just a continuation of the way they were lined up in attacking rooftop solar, right? So it's the same IOUs and their I would say they're prostitutes, that are working behind them, that's pushing essentially an agenda, which is to kill any possible future, as Claire said, for the kind of renewable energy model that we need. And so that framework, even though legislators don't understand it, we have to understand that that's what this is really about. And when it comes to a numbers game, I think that's a nice study, but I'll tell you what, the IOUs are going to come up with their own studies, and their own studies are going to show exactly the opposite is true. And it's just going to be a big battle about whose numbers and who you choose and whatnot, and that And we lose with those battles. We've lost every time. We lost that when we talked the whole basis for the attack on them. It was the avoided cost calculator, and they totally won on that. And that was the biggest pile of crap that came along in years, right? So this notion that data is going to carry the show, I don't believe this, and I think despite that data is nice data, and it shows that this whole thing is a shuck, that we really have to be able to talk about what a shuck it is. It's really basically mean that our communities are going to be pushed into huge costs for transmission line development, because there's going to be no other way, to survive here, or no other way to get electricity other than what the IOUs determine. They're going to kill all ability to do rooftop solar and DER deployments, and so on and so forth. So the stakes, I'm just saying, the stakes are extremely high, and it's going to be important for people to understand what those stakes are, and not rely on data and studies that people don't trust anyway. I mean,
Right.
I don't know who these people are. Any study that's done, it's done to basically meet the needs of whoever's paying for it. And we see that all the time with the CVC. They buy their folks all the time. So I think we really need to get to to what people are saying here today, and look at the broader stakes. Thanks a lot, Dave, for presenting all that. But thanks to everyone else for pointing out where the real stakes are lying.
Yeah, and the thing I want to just echo, because I even as the guy who brings the data, I'm with you, Al, on this, is the data is useful in as much as we have allies and people who we need on our side who just need to feel confident that they need to just understand, because if some working class people are going to benefit from this, you're going to want to know that. If the waters are muddy, at least having the data helps you understand that, so you can feel like you're on terra firma. Otherwise, we are not going to win this fight through data. We're going to win it through organizing, being loud, people, and basically it's going to be changing the political calculation for the dopes who voted for this thing to begin with, and the regulators that they appoint. And that's not going to be done through persuasion or argument. It's going to be done just through sheer politics. And the data is for our home team to go get our home team together and make sure we feel like we're on terra firma and we're on the right side of working people. And that's it.
Okay, we're at 1 o'clock. So I want to thank Dave especially for organizing, for being here and presenting this excellent data. And I think we will look forward to our next meeting. But thank you all. And especially thank you, Dave. And thanks for coming.
Thank
Thank
you
you,
all.
Dave.